What's in my camera bag? For the first time on this channel, I'm going to be showing you what I keep here in my camera bag and what I use to shoot my photos and videos when I'm out traveling. I'm also going to show you what I keep in my van as well, like lights and extra backup items for when I need them. The reality is that depending on what it is that I'm shooting, if I take the van, I'm gonna have a lot more lens options. But if I just take a small backpack like this, I'm only gonna probably take 1 or 2 lenses max, and I'll take this bag and go hike up a mountain. The advantage of being able to be really light is super important, I think, when you are doing any kind of filmmaking that requires you to go up a mountain or a super remote place. All gear will be linked in the description, so if you want to check it out, it'll be available there. Let's start with the bag. This is the Lowepro ProTactic BP 450 AW2. Wow, that was a mouthful. Anyways, besides being such a long-winded name, this bag holds everything that I need to travel and film both photos and videos like these. I really like the customization of organization and the protection that it offers. If I had to change one thing about it, I would definitely make a more robust tripod strap. The little tripod straps here are pretty nice and nice to have, but you'd expect for a bag that you're paying over $250 for to have everything premium, and these just don't feel completely premium. Starting on the outside of the bag right here, this is where my travel tripod lives, and the tripod that usually goes right here I'm actually using to film the video right now. It's the carbon fiber version of the Peak Designs travel tripod. This is the tripod that I've used for 2 years since 2022, and it's been a great travel tripod. It's great for both static photo and video shots, and it also allows me to capture wide angles of both the landscape and myself in the environment, which can be a really difficult thing when trying to tell a story with video. This tripod has been on the top of high mountain passes, vast deserts, swamps, and everything else in between. In my Colorado video, I actually didn't talk about this at all, but I took the tripod and jammed it into the snow, ice, and mud so that me and Hunter could have a little handhold during a super slippery section, and it was the only thing that kept us from sliding down the mountain. I definitely don't recommend doing it, but it's good to know that the gear is super robust and can hold up to something it wasn't even intended to be used for. With vlogs and when you're exploring new environments, it can just be so tempting to just want to handhold everything and just vlog style, but when you have a full style travel tripod that you can just put the camera on, it has nice Arca Swiss plates that you can just lock in there. You can step back, capture you and the whole environment. It's just something that I think is so cool and worth having. For me, a lot of the gear that I like has to do with how effortless the workflow is. And with this tripod, I can just unlock everything, deploy it out fast, step out, and get the shot that I need. If I had one thing to complain about this tripod, it's the fact that it's $600. Look, I know it's Peak Design. I know that they're a top tier company and they're selling themselves as a premium brand. The reality is this product has been out for a few years now, and one would expect for them to drop the price just a little bit. I hope to keep using this tripod in the future, and I plan to keep using it until it breaks. If it does break, I don't think I would get another one. The technology has been out for long enough now to where there are other carbon fiber tripod options, and I would definitely take a look at getting one of those because you can get one for around $400. The next thing that I want to talk about on the outside of the bag is this Peak Designs capture clip. This may be the greatest invention of both photo and video of all time. I use this thing every single day. What this does is it makes it so convenient to just be able to snap in the camera and then be hands-free. I find this super important when I'm traveling from shoot to shoot location. By putting the camera here, your body is more able to bear the weight and not your neck if you're wearing a camera strap. When I'm not using it on this bag, I can just take this off and remove it and add it on to whatever bag that I'm using. Opening up the back of the main bag here, first item I'm going to talk about is the Sony G Master 16-35 f2.8 lens. This is my go-to lens now for 80 to 90% of my stuff. Last year it was the 24-70 G Master f2.8, but I find that I just really like the wider end of the focal lengths because it can give you the whole image. You can see everything. 16-35 focal length is just a super useful and incredible focal length range. On the wide end, you can capture yourself in the whole environment. And I also like to do environmental portraits and really make the viewer feel like that you are in the location there with you. And then on the tight end, all the way to 24 or even 35 millimeters, it's great because you can get really close to your subject, and then you can pick out the details with that 35. The color in this lens is just second to none. I love the color science of it, and it's also super great pairing in low light. So f2.8 is nice and wide. Anytime I'm shooting in blue hour or in the evening, I can just crank up the ISO a little bit, keep it in 2.8, and I haven't had a problem seeing in low light conditions with this lens. It's weather sealed. I can shoot out in the rain with it. I don't have to worry about any of the elements getting damaged. It's a professional and nice lens that is worth the money. Before I got this lens, I had the Sigma 14 to 24 millimeter f2.8. There's nothing wrong with the image quality of that lens. It's a super great Sigma art lens. I will say that it was kind of a hassle that I couldn't put any filters on the front. So with this lens, I can just put on an ND filter or whatever kind of filter that I want. You're good, that's it. But in the Sigma 14 to 24 millimeter, you couldn't put on any front lens filters. And the way that you would have to do it is you'd have to open up the back here and then add the filter in. I just found myself not really liking that because I'm always outside and doing stuff. There's just the opportunity to have dust get in your sensor is rather inconvenient. So I decided to sell that and then get this one instead because it's more suited to my needs. It's a very similar focal length, although 14 millimeter was nice because on the wide end you tend to get more of your environment, but I think 16 is great for what I'm doing. My second lens that I usually carry is my 85mm f1.4 art lens. This is my favorite lens for capturing both close-ups and portraits. The 85mm f1.4 allows me to have a really shallow depth of field, and I can isolate my subjects more easily. Also like to take this out when I'm shooting in a really low light environment. The f1.4 is a really nice and wide open aperture, and when I pair it with my a7 IV, it's just a low light monster. I can shoot in dusk, in the dark. It can pretty much see in the dark. It's just a really great lens. Something that I switch this out with occasionally is my Tamron 70 to 180 f2.8. I will take out the Tamron, and if I need the 180 focal length to see something further away, that's great. But I think for video, 85mm is a wonderful lens to have to get that compression. So if I have some mountains in the background, I want to bring them closer, I can take this out. It's a nice shallow depth of field, really great for environmental portraits. The a7 IV is my main camera 99% of the time. I think the a7 IV is one of the best cameras Sony has ever made. It's great for both photos and videos, and it's the perfect hybrid shooter camera. I don't really have a B cam at this point right now, but something that I'm looking at getting in the future is a Sony FX30, and I think that the FX30 has some things in it that can help bounce the a7 IV out a little bit better. The only two things that the Sony a7 IV is lacking in my opinion is the fact that you have a 1.5 times crop factor when shooting in 4K 60. The FX30 has no crop factor when shooting in 4K 60, and I can even shoot in 4K 120 with that. The other disadvantage is that sometimes, not all the time, but on very rare occasions and in very specific circumstances, the a7 IV can overheat. Whenever I'm shooting in direct sunlight, I found that the camera can easily overheat if you're shooting in 4K. But a solution that I found is that if you open up the battery door, it helps dissipate the heat a little bit better. So that's always an option. The FX30, on the other hand, doesn't have any overheating problems because it has an internal fan that helps cool the camera when you're shooting in long durations of 4K 60 and 4K 120. The only other two cameras that I'll sometimes use in conjunction with the a7 IV is my DJI Mini 3 Pro and my iPhone 15 Pro. I think the video that comes out of the iPhone 15 Pro is amazing, but you definitely need to get some ND filters if you want to be more able to control your shutter speed. To power this camera, I have these Sony NPF Z100 Z series lithium batteries. That's a mouthful to say. I prefer to use the Sony native batteries instead of some third-party batteries because these have way more charge cycles in them. And when you're performing in extreme cold and extreme temperatures, whether hot or cold, these will perform better and keep a better charge over longer durations. So although that these are more expensive, I highly recommend getting them because they'll last you a lot longer and be able to be more robust when in the extreme environments. During long shoots, I typically like to keep 3 to 4 of these with me. I also have a little battery case. In this battery case, I keep extra batteries, and I also think it's cool that you can put in your extra SD cards up in here. I typically won't bring this full case with me unless I'm doing some big event like a wedding or corporate event, in which case I would bring this and a couple chargers to keep all my batteries charged and going for the day. This battery charger is super important to have so that you can charge multiple batteries at one time. If you just plug it into the camera, you can only get one battery. But if you do this and the camera, you can charge up to 3 batteries at once. And I'm thinking about getting another one that has 3 slots, so then I'll be able to charge 5 batteries all at once. And that's a huge advantage. For memory cards, I have an assortment of different memory cards that I like. I typically like to keep them in here. And I have all kinds. This is a Sony Tough card. The longer that I've done this, I found that I really like to have memory cards that are V90 and above. They are a lot more expensive than your regular memory cards because the write and read speed is so much faster. If I want to take a shutter burst of raw photos, for example, that can back up your camera, backlogs all that information in there, and it has to write to the card, and that can honestly take up to 5 minutes sometimes if you don't have a fast enough card. But with the V90, you just go and it's just so fast. It writes fast and you don't have to worry about it. You could just keep shooting on the next thing that you need to do. And when you are covering events or weddings, I think it's very important to have fast cards. I found that V60 is okay. It's fast enough. That V60 for photo bursts, probably not as much. It's still fast, but V90 is definitely where you want to be with that. This is my Mindshift Mini filter nest, and it says that you can only fit up to 6 filters in here, but I've been able to get up to 8. What I have in this right now is my polarizer, a Tiffin UV and Black Pro Mist filter, and my Freewell variable ND filter. I think that it's great to be able to organize all of your filters and see where they are at a moment's notice, because when you're going through your workflow, you just want to be able to grab what you need and put it on and take it off as you need to. The Freewell ND filters are wonderful because you can just twist the little side there and you can adjust your level as you need. I find it super useful, especially on bright sunny days when I want to have more control over my shutter speed. This is the Nitecore BB21 portable air blower. I was a little bit doubtful at this at first because I used to have just little squeeze air blowers, but as soon as I got this, it's amazing. It has a little light that you can look at your lens and you can see if there's dirt on there or not. It comes with a little brush here for cleaning, and it has a really high and fast airspeed. You can blow off any dust on your lens. So you have 3 modes. There's silent, there's optical, and then turbo if you want to knock off more dust. I find this super useful and I use it every day. For lights, I like to use this little Lume Cube Panel Go. It's really small and I'm able to get lights on to wherever I need in dark spaces. It's kind of the bare minimum that you would want to have for kind of like a run and gun situation, but this is great, especially if I'm in somewhere like a cave or abandoned building where there's no power or anything to light up. I can just have this little panel put off to the side, and then you have an awesome looking image. At the time that I got this, there wasn't a whole lot of options. Lume Cube was more or less the forefront of light panels, but now there are a lot of options that exist that you can look at and find similar panels to this. The drone that I use right now is the DJI Mini 3 Pro. What I really like about this drone is that it is so small. I can just put this in my pocket or a bag or wherever, and I can just forget about it until I need it. And what's great about this is that you can get batteries that make the flight time last up to 45 minutes. So I can just put this in my bag with 2 batteries. I get like an hour and a half of flight time, which is plenty of time to get shots. So if you are a frequent viewer, you'll know that I've crashed my fair share of drones. I think I crashed like 2 of them last year. And the one drawback of this drone is that it is just very fragile. So it cannot take a hit. If you hit anything, tree branch, anything that is just slightly solid, it will shatter. There's just not much protecting this camera. If you get this drone, just know you cannot hit anything. It does have front and back sensors, which help a little bit, but the thing that's gotten me the most is just the side. It has no side sensors, so if you're doing any kind of orbit, you just have to have a spotter or absolutely make sure that you are not going to be hitting anything when you do your orbit. I think the DJI Air 2S is built with a lot more metal compared to this. It's also a little bit bigger, and if I were to get another drone, I would either get that or the DJI Air 3 because it has multiple cameras. This just has one camera focal length of 24 millimeters. The benefit of the Air 2S compared to the DJI Mini 3 is that the Air 2S is a lot heavier and therefore it has more wind resistance. It also can take hits more. I've known people who've crashed the Air 2S and it's been completely fine. This is the controller that I carry for my drone, and what I like about this is the screen is nice and bright. You can see everything that it is that you need to do, and the sticks are also on this back here, and you just screw them in whenever you need them. Lastly, for the drone, these are my Freewell ND filters. I think it's super important, especially when you're flying really close to your subject, to have the proper shutter speed, and having ND filters on your camera, whether it be a drone, phone, or mirrorless camera like this, is super important to when you are wanting to control your shutter speed. I also keep various cloths and cleaning utensils in here for wiping off lenses, water, or dust. My Peak Design's little tightening screw in here, and periodically you'll have to take this tool and tighten up all the legs of the Peak Design carbon fiber travel tripod. And for audio, I have two main microphones. The first is the Sony ECM B1M shotgun microphone, and what I really like about this is it just has a little hot shoe mount that plugs directly in and records digital audio. There aren't a lot of cameras that can do this, and the fact that you can just plug in and then go, and you have crisp, clean audio that is digital, like you don't have to have any external cords going into the auxiliary portion of your camera. This is really great for especially run and gun situations. And it's just so tiny. It fits in the size of your hand. It's not absolutely huge. I also really like the back here. You can adjust your levels here. You have your low cut filter. And one of the more unique things about this microphone that I like is you can adjust this dial here. So if you want to shoot just in front of you and capture the audio in front, you choose that. Second switch is the front and the sides, and then third switch you can get in front and behind the camera, and that's really useful for if you're wanting to go and just point stuff out. Typically I'll use this when conditions aren't as windy. I find the low cut filter to be helpful when it's windy, but if I'm having any kind of long duration wind or rain or super cold conditions, I'll store this and then I'll use my other mic. My other microphone is the first generation of the DJI Wireless Lav Mics. I'm actually using this microphone right now to record this video. What I love is that these transmitters are just so small and discreet. They record great wireless audio. This transmitter has a range of over 800 feet, which is plenty if you want to move around in your environment and talk. It has backup recording internally as well as transmitting the signal to the camera. They come with these little magnets that you can just put in down here and clip to the shirt, and then you don't have to worry about it. I've recorded whole videos when it'll be blowing wind, like constant 30-mile-an-hour winds with sustained gusts, and I'll put these on, tuck them under my shirt with the dead cat on, and you can't even tell that it's really windy. It's pretty incredible that you can get quality audio in a condition like that. I always like to bring two forms of recording because I think audio is such an important piece when creating stuff, and it really immerses the viewer into your video or whatever content that you're making. When you combine the charging time with the case of the mics, you have 14 hours of recording time with this. So that's everything in my bag. I have some other items that I don't usually always carry in here, but that I like to have for options. As I mentioned before, I have my Tamron 70 to 180 f2.8 lens if I want to get closer to my subjects or if I'm in an area where I can't get as close on foot. And the other lens that I don't usually keep in the bag is the lens that I'm using right now. It's my Sony F1.8 20mm lens. That's a great lens for if I want to do low light stuff, and I feel like I don't use this lens near enough, but every time that I use it I'm reminded of how awesome it is, especially during low light situations. It gives you a nice wide view without really noticing any distortion to the sides. Anytime you put on a 16 or something that's a little bit more than 20, you always get this distortion on the ends, but with 20mm it just has a lot more of a natural look, and you can put that in any environment. You can still get that nice wide shot, put the viewer in with you, and it doesn't feel like it's too much. I think it's good to have one or two backup lenses just in case something happens to your main lens. With this one, I was filming my van tour and I ended up dropping my 16 to 35 and I thought I was doomed, but I remembered I had my 20mm and I could get through the rest of that video without having to worry while my other lens was getting fixed. How I power all this is with my Jackery 2000 watt Pro generator. I can charge this up to 100% and it lasts me about 3 to 4 days max, and then I have to go recharge it, plug it in the wall. I chose the Jackery out of some of the other brands that are out there because it has some of the fastest recharge time. You plug this in directly to an outlet, it will charge this whole thing from 0 to full in just an hour and a half. At 43 pounds, I think that is the maximum weight that you would want to have for a battery, because when I'm taking this in to a coffee shop or Starbucks, I can just take it in, move in quickly, plug it in, I'm gone in an hour and a half. Nobody really cares. I think overall my power requirements are satisfied. I'm not too worried about having to plug in every 3 days. In the future, I'm thinking about expanding and getting another one of these so that I would only have to charge every 6 days. I really like the fact that I don't have solar panels up on top right now because it's super concealed. The first thing that people look for to tell if somebody's living in a vehicle is if there are solar panels on top. And since mine doesn't have any, it's super discreet. Nobody even knows that I'm here most of the time. It might be something worth considering in the future. The computer that I use to edit everything is my Lenovo Legion laptop. It is such a great computer. I bought it for probably about $1,000. And what's really nice about this laptop is you can upgrade the RAM. So for my first year on YouTube, I was using this and I upgraded to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that got me by for a while. So I put in 64 gigabytes of RAM in this, and then from then on, I noticed that I could do things a lot faster. As a full-time YouTuber and content creator, I think that it's super important to be able to have multiple programs open at the same time. You can have your Photoshop open and then your video editor open as well, and you don't have to worry about closing tabs. I think something like this is appropriate to have while you're living in a van because you don't have an infinite source of power. You have what power you take with you and then maybe some solar panels if you have them on top. With the most demanding power setting of my laptop, I can edit for up to 12 hours straight with this Jackery. Something that not a lot of people think about, but you might want to consider if you end up living in a van, is that the power consumption matters for computers. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and check out this next video over here for my full review of the GoRuck GR1 backpack. I'll see you over there.